She fell in love with him and wrote him love letters, unaware that someone else was receiving them and catching feelings for the guy. You won't believe what happens next when she finds out. Kindly subscribe to this channel to get more of our latest movies. This story begins with a young lady named Sandra who was still completing her university studies. She loved writing letters, especially to a particular guy named Charles, whom she had been in love with since her first year in school. One day, Charles came to see her. Sandra restrained him from reading her letter and offered him a snack. He began telling her about the issues with his girlfriend and his fear of being single, worried about what his friends would say. Sandra advised him, and he eventually left. Question: have you ever been afraid to express your feelings to someone because of what others might think? Days later, Chioma, Sandra's best friend, was reading her letters. Sandra took them back, but Chioma asked why she hadn't given them to Charles yet, believing he wouldn't take her seriously. Chioma encouraged her to act, reminding Sandra that they would soon finish university, and urged her not to miss her chance. They enjoyed the moment together. Meanwhile, a young man named Gideon was reading a novel when his mother approached him about the family company, which his late father had owned. She wanted him to take over, but Gideon preferred that his uncle run it. Later that night, his girlfriend Stella complained about their relationship, while Gideon insisted they were fine. Stella playfully grabbed one of his novels to get his attention. Another day, while Gideon was reading, his mother informed him that his uncle was mismanaging the company. Gideon, who had wanted to be a teacher, was told he needed to take over to prevent the business from failing. Reluctantly, he agreed. Question: would you take on a responsibility you didn't want, knowing it's important for your family's future? Back with Sandra, she wrote her final letter to Charles, making Chioma happy. As she packed her things, Charles arrived, but left immediately due to an urgent call. Sandra got an idea. She placed all her letters in his bag before leaving. Chioma, done packing, was thrilled to hear Sandra had done what needed to be done. Later that evening, Charles arrived at his destination, but forgot his bag in the car. Meanwhile, Gideon went to his father's office to claim ownership. When his uncle tried to dismiss him, Gideon respectfully refused to back down, ready to take over. That same day, Sandra visited her sister, Peace. Peace asked about Charles, and Sandra shared her excitement about the letters. Later that night, Charles called Sandra. She asked if he received her message, but he mentioned only that he forgot his bag. Sandra didn't mention the letters, and they enjoyed a pleasant conversation. Weeks later, while Gideon was reading at home, Stella requested they go out, but he insisted they stay home. Frustrated, she left. Meanwhile, Gideon clashed with his uncle over the company. Though his uncle claimed Gideon had snatched the business, Gideon was actually in the right. His uncle promised to fight and left. One day, Sandra spent time with Peace, who was already in a serious relationship. Peace wanted to introduce Sandra to new people, but Sandra refused. Charles called and later came to see Sandra, telling her he was single. He mentioned reconnecting with a girl from their secondary school. Sandra encouraged him, but reminded him they couldn't date, at least for now. Question: if you were Sandra, would you finally confess your feelings or continue waiting? Meanwhile, Stella tried to discuss marriage with Gideon after 2 years together, but his response made it clear he wasn't ready. Weeks later, Chioma visited Sandra, excitedly showing off her engagement ring. When she asked about Charles, Sandra reluctantly explained what had happened. That night, Sandra began writing again, wondering why she hadn't expressed her feelings before. Gideon, meanwhile, was signing a major deal at his father's company, which brought growth and attention. His mother warned him about his uncle spreading negativity and asked about his marriage prospects with Stella, but he was uninterested, focusing instead on work. Charles visited Sandra while she worked on a book, but didn't reveal his true intentions. He mentioned a friend who liked her and suggested a double date. Sandra initially didn't want to attend, but Chioma convinced her to go, showing her why it was important for Charles to see what he was missing. Later, Stella revealed to Gideon that she was pregnant. Gideon, unprepared for fatherhood, rejected her and withdrew. That evening, Charles opened the door for Sandra. Abel, who was also present, was stunned by her beauty. He introduced himself and tried to engage her in conversation, but Sandra excused herself to use the restroom. She tried to stay focused, but upon realizing Charles' attention wasn't on her, she left immediately. Question: do you think Sandra will eventually get the attention of the person she truly loves, or will misunderstandings continue to interfere? That evening, Gideon's mom was overjoyed at the thought of becoming a grandmother soon. She encouraged her son to take responsibility for his actions, even though she hadn't wanted this situation. Stella arrived later, but Gideon still resisted. She reminded him that all she wanted was for him to marry her and be there for his child. Question: would you take responsibility for a situation even if it wasn't what you originally wanted? Days later, Charles came to see Sandra. He informed her about the engagement ring he wanted to get for Titi, his girlfriend. Sandra told him she was dating someone else. Peace was shocked to hear this, and she left to prepare for Charles's engagement, while Charles himself was also shocked. At that moment, Gideon reflected on his life. The simple life he had dreamed of seemed impossible to achieve now. In the early hours of the morning, Gideon proposed to Stella, and she said yes. While Stella shared the news with her friends, Gideon left for work. At the office, Gideon's secretary came for his approval to burn some goods since the owner hadn't claimed them and it was company policy. He told her to bring the items to him, which she did. Later, while inspecting the goods, something caught his attention, some letters which he began to read. That night, Sandra was busy writing her book. One day, Stella noticed Gideon smiling as usual, but he told her it was because of his book. Question: have you ever had a moment when something small reminded you of someone or something important? At the office, Gideon began to realize the words in the letters were meaningful and real. Weeks later, Chioma and Sandra were enjoying a moment together when Sandra discovered her book had been published. She was thrilled, and so was her friend. Meanwhile, Titi came home to a surprise. Her boyfriend had proposed, and she accepted. Abel and Sandra stepped aside to talk. Sandra admitted she wasn't emotionally ready, but told him that if she were, she would let him know. That evening, Stella discussed their traditional marriage plans with Gideon, who assured her everything was well taken care of. She also complained about the time he spent on his book, but he only gave her vague promises. Days later, Chioma and Peace were excited to learn that Sandra's book, recently published, had been recognized as one of the best romantic books of the year. They organized a celebration, and Sandra was invited for an interview. During the interview, Sandra revealed that much of her book was inspired by real experiences, though she left out some details. She was congratulated and used the opportunity to promote her book. The next day, while Gideon and his fiancée were having a meal together, she mentioned a trending book and asked him to read it and give his review. She also inquired about preparations for their introduction ceremony, and he assured her everything was set. That night, Charles called Sandra to congratulate her on her book. She explained it was about a man and a way of expressing feelings. Intrigued, Charles decided to read it, and they had a wonderful conversation. The next day, Gideon realized that the author of the book his fiancée had shown him was the same person whose letters he had been reading. He discovered her name and was amazed at how she expressed her feelings in writing, even though he had never met her. Question: do you think Sandra will date Charles if he finds out about the letters? The following day, Sandra received a package containing a page of the letter she had written to Charles, along with a reply. She was in tears and called Charles, thinking he was behind it. But when he asked if the letter was about him, she said it was an old infatuation and ended the call. That night, she shared the news with her friend, who was excited that Sandra had a secret admirer. Meanwhile, Stella asked Gideon why he kept postponing their introduction. He could only say he needed time and walked away. Later, Gideon's mom tried to understand the problem, worried about what others would say, but Gideon insisted he needed to be certain about what he truly wanted. She was emotional, but Gideon stood his ground. One day, Gideon dreamed he was talking to Sandra, pouring out his feelings. Stella interrupted, asking who Sandra was. As he tried to explain, she left in anger. That night, Gideon watched Sandra's interview video and began writing another letter to her. When Sandra received it, she was stunned. It was as if he knew what she had been waiting for. According to the letter, they were to meet on Sunday. Sandra told her friend about this, emphasizing that it couldn't be Charles, who was abroad planning his wedding. Chioma was thrilled for her. Finally, Sandra was going to meet this unknown admirer. On Sunday, as Gideon prepared to leave, Stella bombarded him with questions about why he had been shutting everyone out, including his mother. She wanted to know who this girl was, but he said he had somewhere important to be and left. Sandra was ready to meet the unknown admirer, but to her surprise, it was Charles, who asked if the letter was about him. She admitted it was. However, Charles had already ended things with Titi to pursue her. Just then, Gideon arrived. Sandra had to send Charles away and welcomed Gideon instead. He expressed how much it meant to him, but Sandra realized that both the man she wrote the letter for and the man who read it cared for her. Appreciating Gideon, she concluded that she was no longer the girl who wrote the letters. She told him to leave, and he did. When Gideon returned home, Stella realized she couldn't compete with the woman behind the letters. She faked her pregnancy and ended their relationship. Weeks later, Sandra, her sister, and her friends celebrated her book, which was not only emotional, but inspiring. Charles remained single. Sandra reflected that love often teaches important lessons and should arrive unexpectedly. Chioma shared that she was pregnant, and they enjoyed the moment together. Months later, Sandra attended a conference to speak about her new book. To her surprise, Gideon was in the audience. He came forward to congratulate her, and Sandra expressed that she was now ready to write a love story from the beginning. Question: do you think love always finds a way, even when timing seems complicated? If you enjoyed this movie, kindly subscribe to this channel to get more of our latest movies.